You are 3 days old. You have never seen the sun. You don't know your name, your tribe, or the century you were born into. You only know hunger, and the person who was supposed to feed you is gone. For most of human history, this wasn't a rare tragedy. It was a recurring crisis that every group of humans had to solve, or watch their youngest members die. So how did they solve it? The answer reaches back at least 300,000 years, and it will completely change the way you think about who actually raises a child. Infant mortality in the ancient world was staggering by modern standards. Archaeologist Jane Bijstra, who has spent decades analyzing prehistoric skeletal populations across North America, estimates that roughly 30 to 50% of children in many prehistoric groups died before reaching adulthood. But the most dangerous window wasn't toddlerhood. It wasn't even the first year. It was the first few months of life, the period when a baby is entirely, helplessly dependent on milk. Human breast milk is not optional nutrition. It is a complete biological system. It contains antibodies, fats, proteins, 2 proteins, and sugars calibrated in ratios that no other food source can replicate for a newborn. The antibodies alone are extraordinary. They essentially borrow the mother's immune history and deliver it directly into the infant's bloodstream. Without milk, a baby in the ancient world faced a very narrow window before its immune system collapsed and its body began to fail. So when a mother died in childbirth, which happened far more often than most people imagine, or when her milk simply didn't come in, the group faced a crisis with no formula, no refrigerator, no hospital, and no fallback plan. Just people, and whatever they could figure out. The first and most powerful solution was another woman's body. Wet nursing, the practice of one woman breastfeeding another's child, is one of the oldest documented human behaviors we have evidence for. Researchers studying ancient Mesopotamian clay tablets from around 2000 BCE found detailed written contracts governing wet nurse arrangements, specifying payment, duration, the nurse's diet, and rules about her behavior during the contract period. But the practice almost certainly predates writing by hundreds of thousands of years. Long before anyone carved a law into stone, women were quietly keeping other women's babies alive. Evolutionary anthropologist Sarah Blafer Hrdy, whose landmark work Mother Nature Reshaped How Scientists Think About Primate Parenting, argues that cooperative infant care, what she calls alloparenting, was not a backup plan for early humans. It was the plan. Human babies, she points out, are extraordinarily expensive compared to the infants of any other primate. They require more calories, more carrying, more social interaction, more protection, and an incomparably longer period of dependence before they can feed themselves. No single mother, Hrdy argues, could have raised a human child to independence alone in a hunter-gatherer environment. Not reliably, not consistently. Survival required a network, and that network was built into the structure of ancient social life. That network included grandmothers, aunts, yes, older sisters, and crucially, other nursing women in the band. In small hunter-gatherer groups, births clustered within tight communities. Several women might be nursing at the same time. If one woman died, another woman who had recently given birth often had enough milk, or enough biological capacity, to share. This wasn't charity in the modern sense. It was woven into the social contract of the group. The baby that survived was the group's baby. Its death was the group's loss. But the biology goes even deeper than that. Paleoanthropologist Dean Falk, who has studied the evolution of human mothering behavior, points to a remarkable feature hidden in our own physiology. Human women are unusual among primates in that they can sometimes induce lactation without having recently given birth, a process known as induced lactation. With enough physical stimulation over enough time, the body can be coaxed into producing milk even in a woman who has not been pregnant for months or years. This is not a myth or a folktale. It is documented biology, and there are ethnographic records, accounts of living traditional society studied by anthropologists in the 19th and 20th centuries, of grandmothers successfully nursing grandchildren when no younger nursing woman was available. Think about what that means. The human body carries a built-in emergency override for exactly this situation. Evolution did not leave this problem unsolved. But what happened when no nursing woman was available at all? When the band was small, or traveling fast, or when illness had swept through and taken multiple mothers in a short period? This is where ancient humans did something that surprises most people today. They fed babies animal milk. Archaeological evidence for early animal milk consumption is older than most people expect. residue analysis on pottery fragments from Neolithic sites in Britain and the Near East. Pioneering work led by researcher Richard Evershed at the University of Bristol has confirmed the presence of dairy lipids in vessels dating back 6,000 to 9,000 years. Some of these vessels are small. Some have narrow spouts or perforations consistent with feeding devices. Not quite baby bottles in the modern sense, but not far off at all. Before pottery existed, the options were more improvised. Animal skin, hollowed gourds, and shells have all been proposed as early liquid containers. Soft animal hide, tied at the neck and pierced with a tiny hole, could function as a rudimentary feeding vessel. The milk itself came from whatever animals the group had access to: goats, cattle, hodl, sheep, reindeer, horses, depending on the region and era. In the earliest periods, before domestication, milk may have come from hunted animals. A freshly killed female animal still nursing her young would sometimes carry milk. Evidence from cave sites in France and Spain suggests early humans paid close attention to reproductive and lactation cycles of the animals they hunted. This was survival knowledge, passed down across generations. Animal milk is not identical to human milk. It is lower in certain antibodies, higher in certain proteins, and harder for a very young infant to digest. A baby fed exclusively on animal milk in the ancient world faced real risks, but it was vastly better than nothing. And in combination with other strategies, it kept children alive. One of those other strategies was pre-chewed food. For infants too young to chew but old enough to begin accepting something other than milk, caregivers in ancient societies practiced what researchers call pre-mastication, chewing food soft and transferring it directly to the infant's mouth. This sounds unusual today, but researcher Liuba Popova, who studied pre-mastication behavior across dozens of ethnographic records from cultures on every inhabited continent, found it to be one of the most cross-culturally consistent infant feeding behaviors in the entire human record. It required no tools, no fire, no vessel, just a caregiver with food and the willingness to use their own body as a processor. Pre-masticated food is easier to digest than raw or roughly ground food. It is warm, it is moistened, and crucially, it contains enzymes from the caregiver's saliva that begin breaking down starches before the food even reaches the infant's stomach. This is, in all likelihood, one of the oldest feeding behaviors in the human lineage. Far older than agriculture, far older than pottery, possibly as old as our species itself. Honey was another ancient supplement. Raw honey has antimicrobial properties that have been recognized across dozens of independent cultures. In small amounts, diluted with water, it was used as a caloric supplement for infants in societies ranging from ancient Egypt to pre-Columbian South America. Modern medicine cautions against giving honey to children under 1 year of age due to the risk of infant botulism, a bacterial spore present in raw honey that an infant's immature gut cannot neutralize. In the ancient world, this risk was unknown. Honey was sometimes the difference between a starving infant surviving another day or not. Bone broth is another candidate. Evidence from hearth sites across prehistoric Europe suggests that ancient humans regularly boiled bones, both to extract marrow fat and to create a nutrient-dense liquid. Some researchers have proposed that thin, fat-rich broths made from simmered animal bones were among the earliest supplemental foods given to infants. There is no direct skeletal proof of this, but it fits what we know about ancient food processing, and it aligns with practices documented in traditional societies worldwide. And sometimes, in the hardest situations, none of these solutions were possible. In some hunter-gatherer societies, when an infant's chance of survival appeared extremely low, because no nursing woman was available, because the group was moving fast across dangerous terrain, because resources were critically scarce, the group made a devastating calculation. Infanticide, particularly of newborns, has been documented across an uncomfortable number of historical and ethnographic records. Researchers including anthropologist Mildred Dickerman and evolutionary biologist Sarah Blaffer Purdy have written about this not as cruelty, but as a form of brutal resource allocation, a choice made to protect the survival of existing children, of the group, and of the mother herself. It is one of the most difficult truths about ancient life. It was real, and it was not made lightly. But that is only one end of the spectrum. At the other end is a truth that is far more powerful. The archaeological record is full of evidence that ancient humans went to extraordinary lengths to keep vulnerable infants alive. Infant skeletons recovered from Sungir in Russia, a burial site dating back roughly 34,000 years, show evidence of children with serious physical disabilities who survived well into childhood. These children could not have fed themselves. They could not have kept up with a moving band without help. Someone carried them. Someone fed them. Someone made a sustained, daily decision that they were worth keeping alive when the easier choice would have been to let them go. That is not the behavior of a species that only valued the strong. That is the behavior of a species that had already figured out something profound, that a child belongs not just to its mother, but to everyone around it. That the instinct to protect the helpless is not a weakness. It is the mechanism by which the species survives. So when you ask how ancient babies survived when their mothers died, the truest answer is not a single technique. It is a system, a web of women with milk to share, a grandmother whose body could be coaxed back into production by nothing more than need, a caregiver willing to chew food soft and pass it mouth to mouth, a scraped animal hide with a hole in its tip, a clay vessel with a narrow spout, a group that understood, in some wordless but powerful way, that this small, screaming, helpless thing did not belong only to one person. It belonged to all of them. That instinct did not disappear when the ancient world ended. You are 3 days old. You have never seen the sun. You only know hunger. And somewhere in the group, gather around you, someone decides you are worth saving. You are here because that decision was made.